Hello, 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 hello. Today I'm talking with Lisi Hocke. We talked about how to play volleyball and the energy boost she gets from daring to ask what she wants.
I'm Ivanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it.
Hello, hello everyone, and hello with me I have Lisi. Is that how I should pronounce your name?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Or Lisi, any variation of that is totally fine.
All right. And well, I want to show also a little bit on where we are. And I'm here in Ghent in Belgium, and you're in Munich, if I'm correct. So we're thanks to Google moving, and then you can see that I've actually talked to already multiple people there in Munich. Munich seems to be becoming one of the hubs where I've talked to many people there. And let's bring you back on screen as well. Um, and for me, the time is it's let's say 10 minutes before 9 in the evening on a Monday evening. What's the time on your side?
Same for me.
Because that's how time zones work. And in Europe, most of us were in the same time zone.
Exactly. Makes it
And
easier.
it makes it a lot easier. Well, sometimes then depending if I need to talk indeed to people from Australia, either one of us have to get up early or talk very, very late. But this makes it indeed easier if it's the same time zone. Before we jump into the questions, what do you want people to know about you?
Well, that's a tough question already. Maybe I can just share a bit about myself. Not sure if people want to know, but I've been working for 16 years now in tech. Actually, yeah, it like time is flying. It doesn't feel like that already, but I've been basically a specialized generalist, as I like to call myself. I just like to jump on a lot of different topics, filling gaps where I see them, where I see the need. And I just thrive working in teams and doing good stuff together and always becoming a bit better and bringing more value to people as well. So yeah, this kind of thing especially was well, I really lived that when working in software product development teams. So where we could hands-on deliver value together. You always know what you did every day, of course, because you see the thing grow and evolve. But actually, as I said, as I'm more like a generalist, this also applies to other kind of teams. It's not the only situation I've been at. It's the situation I've been at most of my career, like being embedded in software product teams, building things hands-on. Now, I've also been very interested about security for long. So just recently, I jumped now to a security team. So I'm seeing things from a different side now. As a security engineer, again, rather as a generalist in that space as well, but also trying to build things better and more secure together. So
And
yeah,
that's a hot topic these days, I would say, indeed.
it is. It is. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's
so
the career
that
side, basically.
and is there more than just the career side that you want people to know about you, or you prefer to keep it to the professional part?
Well, actually, I'm also quite active in the community. So I've been receiving a lot from communities myself. So I try to give back and pay it forward, basically. So I've been blogging, I've been speaking at conferences for quite some time, organizing my first conferences as well, doing a lot of personal challenges to share back and learning together basically with folks out there, and lots of other endeavors where we pair or ensemble together on certain projects. So yeah, that's definitely a big part of my life as well, outside of work.
Okay, but that's why I'm asking, because many of the people that I'm talking here are doing a lot of community work one way or another. and that's always interesting to hear that other part of work, I would say. So yeah, okay, let's jump into that very first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
So I'm not sure how many people know that I play volleyball for most of my life. I'm a huge fan of that sport, and it taught me so much about teams and working in teams and
And are you
finding
still playing
your
today?
place. I'm still playing today.
Wow.
Like really, like since I was 10 years old, 11 years old. So big part of my life, and it taught me a lot about working in teams and collaborating and the different dynamics and creating that space where we can all learn and get better and help each other grow, while we actually also are sometimes in different roles, sometimes in the same roles. So all this stuff there, and it actually taught me a lot for working in teams at work later on that I only then realized. So I'm not sure how many people know that, but I'm pretty sure.
Could you give an example of what about that teamwork that is valuable still today for you?
So in general, any kind of team setting needs to be safe enough for people to raise issues and be comfortable, also to feel uncomfortable, basically raising potential issues like conflicts in a team, for example, bringing things on the table before things start to rot because they're not spoken out loud. So these kind of interpersonal dynamics, you definitely have that also in a sports team. Probably also have that in other groups, like, I don't know, bands and these kind of things. But my experience comes definitely from that kind of sports team setting. And especially in volleyball, is like it's such a team sport that you can't win this alone. You can't just storm up front and do all the points. You have to work together. You literally cannot win without working together very closely. And this is something that so these kind of potential conflicts or other kinds of tension in the team needs to be resolved so that we can actually achieve good things. And that's very, very similar to what I've seen in the work setting as well. Especially as also in both settings, you have most likely sort of specialists. So you're training for a specific role that you fill in the volleyball team. You're training to fill a certain position or role in a software development team. And you can hone your skills there, but it might not be that you always stay in that role. Maybe you switch positions, or you have to become more of a generalist and help out. So also these kind of, and then you have promotions, or in volleyball, maybe you're not playing at all. Maybe you're, on the bench right now, because right now the winning setting might be with you on the bench, and you have to work through all those feelings that comes with that as well, and still fight for your team. And again, so there's a lot of stuff there.
When you say that you, how would I say it? When you say that you train for a certain position, don't you move around in volleyball? I have never played, I only played it maybe a little bit in high school, but I forgot even if I remember anything. So how does that go for training for a certain position?
Yes, so you have really specialized positions where, yes, you always rotate, but that just means that you have a different starting position to then get to the perfect position for that role that you're taking. So for example, for most of my life, I've been playing the setter role, which is the person who has usually every second ball. So you get it from the defense, you pass it to an attacker, you basically decide on the attacking strategy, basically, and then the attacker tries to score the ball or score the point, basically. But for me to always be able to take the second ball and the second pass, basically, I have to position myself always slightly different and run from different positions so that I can then still fulfill my role, although we rotate. So it is quite specialized. Maybe beginners don't specialize yet, of course, but it's quite quickly you'll take over a specific role in the team. And in a work team, that would be maybe you're a developer on maybe focus on only on the back end, or maybe you're more focused on whatever you might define full stack as, or maybe you're more on the UX side of things. So these kind of different roles can also reflect there. But again, maybe you have more like a generalist there. So these kind of roles and also promotions potentially at work that come with it, or seniority levels. At volleyball, this is then if you're basically part of the base team or not. They bring interesting dynamics for a group of people. And this is definitely something where I took a lot from for work. So stepping up, also taking on leadership in the team, being a captain in the team, also temporary in specific situations, taking the lead to, like in a game situation, for example, very referable to a work situation where let's say you have an incident and someone needs to step up and take the lead on that. So lots of stuff there. And it doesn't even end there, because I'm also a coach and a referee in volleyball. So from these parts, I really took a lot with me for my work career. And sometimes it's every day I'm smiling of seeing those parallels.
Yeah, I can definitely think about seeing that. And you're actually not the first to talk about this. I don't know if you know Sandy Mamoli, but she's one of the people that been on the show like a long time ago, written a great book about creating great teams. But she also talked about volleyball, and even I don't know what your level is, but she went on. She even went to the Olympics for playing volleyball. So that's so well. Then that's the next level. Maybe a goal still for you or not. I don't want to compare people, of course, but it was very interesting conversation indeed at that same level of what she learned about sport. And I think there's many other people who talked here about sports, and like you say, it could be musician, it could be another kind of thing, but it basically comes down to the same thing, learning about team dynamics that we can relate to this. And indeed, in a musician group, I would say if it's a pop or rock group, you typically are always part of the performing team. With a volleyball team or a football or basketball, you might be on the bench half of the time, and that indeed creates another dynamic. You still have to prove, and you have to be ready, even on the bench, from what I understand, to go in. Well, if somebody is injured, like 1 minute later, you might be on the field, and you have to be ready for that. So I can imagine that this creates different kind of dynamics and different kind of things. And what I find interesting, understanding. So go ahead.
Yeah, especially understanding, like if you're on the bench, like what your job right now is, because you're still part of the team and you still fulfill a very important role, as you just said, being ready to jump in, even if not somebody is injured, but like for tactical reasons, for any kind of reasons, but also cheering on the team and trying to really keep up that mood and the atmosphere is a super important part, although it might not feel like it in the moment if you didn't yet understand how much of a contribution that can be for a team. Even if you're not actively playing on the field, it's really invaluable if you have people out there on your side, like having your back literally, and pushing you forward through keeping up the mood.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, what I'm even more, well, not more, but also interested in, you said also something interesting about moving from player to coach and even referee. Could you say something about how well that transition and how different these roles are, and then specifically for a team sport like volleyball?
So referee came always in parallel, because so you always have to be the referee for other teams in our leagues. Unless you're really, really playing higher, then you will have external referees for you. But on like the half of the lower levels, you're going to be the referee. So you're not supposed to only play, but you're also supposed to learn the rules for acting as a referee. So not only to be able to play basically, but really to be up there and judge on what is the situation right now, who scored the point, what happened, to see all the things. And that in itself, we started doing that actually from a young age onwards, because it was always part of it as well. So if you want to play, you also have to be a referee. That was a very interesting experience, especially I was back then quite shy as well. So it took some courage to actually get up, be the one everybody looks at, like who scored the point, and then make a decision in that moment in time, which is something that everybody dealt with a bit differently. So it was difficult for most of the people I had on my team for different reasons. But again, it also taught me a lot, because sometimes you have to be the person who decides and then also stand to that decision and all that comes with it. Because if you're like, I don't know, if you make a decision and then you get questioned and you fall over and you're like, oh, no, the other ones. And then you get questioned again. Oh, no, the other ones. This is not going to work. So to draw that clear line and that boundary and to keep that, even if you're not completely certain right now yourself, is really something that like also gets better with practice. But it first, you only feel it when you're in that situation. So the referee part really comes with the playing part in our case, because I mean, I did level up to some point, but not to that level where you don't have that referee coming from your teams anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The coaching part happened actually also to give back to my club, basically, because coaches are always desired. There's always a shortage of coaches to help out, especially with younger folks wanting to try out this sport for the first time. And there was an opportunity for me to step in and try myself out like that while I was at university. So that was basically my side job, being the coach for a group of young girls from, like, I don't know, it was age 8 to 14, this kind of age group. And I've led them, or basically at that age it's also like conveying the basics. What is even volleyball? What are the techniques? How do you do that? What are the rules? And then how do you play well together? All these kind of dynamics at that age as well.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Super interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine that in the beginning of puberty, like, okay, being a team, what does it even mean to be a team, and how do you behave? And that's just raising kids that age is already hard, but creating a team out of this is next level, I would say.
It was a fascinating time, and this again also probably prepared my way to speaking at conferences and then conveying knowledge in a different way later on.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Helping out and even understanding team dynamics even better, I would say, because children won't hide their dysfunctions in the team. Let's put it like that.
It's quite a fascinating age range.
I can imagine. Okay, let's move to that next question. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, do you have any idea what could have become of you?
This question is quite an interesting one for me, because I'd like to stay optimistic, but I sort of my first response to that question was, I probably would be unhappy.
Oh.
Which is quite interesting, because I'd like to stay on the optimism side for most things, but I sort of fear that I would probably have continued my trajectory that I had during university, where I tried different kind of working student jobs, as I was assuming I'm always going to be a lateral entry employee. I tried working in HR, and I assume I would probably continue like that, although it's not really where my heart beats and the passion arises. I didn't know what I want to do back then, so I wanted to try something, right, and see what I can exclude and what is okay. So I fear I would have probably wound up in some corporate setting, doing a job as required. I'm not sure if I would have. I mean, maybe I would have also enjoyed myself and found a great place. But I'm not really sure if I could have discovered what I discovered on my career, that this can be really great, that work doesn't have to suck, that you can have great cultures, that you can really grow, that you can learn for life, that I actually want to invest my personal time as well on these topics. That was unimaginable for me during university. So this all came as a positive surprise for me once I started in tech, and I sort of rather fell into tech anyways. So yeah, my fear would be that I wouldn't have discovered this amazing, even if it's a bubble, this like really good one, and see how good it could be. Because I heard a lot of reports from friends who didn't have that fortune, and that would be my fear, that I wouldn't have discovered how it could be.
It at the same time, it kind of shows that you're happy now, because if you say something else would make me unhappy, I kind of hear like, oh, I'm really happy with the current life I have. Is that a correct statement?
That is absolutely correct, and I realized that quite early on. Once I discovered, oh, I have a place there. It was very dear to my heart for a long time. I just never thought I would be able to work in tech. Like, it was sort of always excluded from the start for me because, well, society tells you, what girls, especially my generation, should do. And I would never have imagined I grow up to be the woman that I am now and working where I am, and working in the field I'm working in, because that was just like, not
And
intended for me.
and does that mean that there were people around you when you grew up that were actually discourage you to go into that field?
Yes, and so some explicitly, a lot of that was implicit. So, for example, when it came to school age, and then I had to decide, okay, I could go into the languages branch of my school, or I could go to the natural sciences. I should do something with languages, right? Because girls do languages. So I went there. Well, I'm a generalist, so I could have done both actually. So it didn't hurt me in that sense, but it was implied. So to go in that direction. And only very much later on, like while I was already working in tech, I realized, wait, it doesn't make any sense. I grew up with tech, literally. I have like 2 elder brothers, and my father, we always had lots of computers at home. I was like, as early as I could, like, I don't know, 2-3 years old, I was already playing my computer games and whatnot. And like, it doesn't actually make sense that it was so discouraged.
But then I hear
But
discouraged mostly outside of your family of origin. So
yes,
not
yes,
your father, or
no,
but more schools and maybe friends around you.
exactly. Friends, school, definitely. Also with the teachers, here was also the explicit discouragement, because I would have liked to try learning programming already at school, but the only course that was offered was unfortunately led by a teacher who was very openly against girls, and I just didn't want to go there. I didn't dare. Honestly, didn't have the courage at that moment in time to stand up against such a behavior, so I didn't dare. So I only learned it way later than everybody
But
else.
in a way, you also shield yourself off from that kind of bad influence on you as well, because I can imagine that if you would have tried, and if you would have, if that
Exactly.
person would have bashed a year or two on you, maybe you would have thought even less that you were able to do that. So yeah,
Yeah, it could
it's a
be.
little bit hard to see what could have happened, of course. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, this is unfortunately not the first time I hear similar kind
Yeah.
of stories here. Many different women share the same thing, and unfortunately, it doesn't matter what age they are.
Mm-mm.
From the older to the even much younger people, a lot of them say the same thing. But here we are, and you ended up in tech anyway. So yeah, that. And is there a moment when you made that shift, when also in your head you were like, no, come on, I'm going to do this?
Well, I think there was the moment when I sort of fell into it but I think, no, maybe a step before. So I think the moment when I dared to try something something for me at that time, daring, that was at the end of university. So I studied sinology. So basically China studies. I was interested in that. I was aware I will always be a lateral entry employee, but I was fine with that because back then I already realized I'll just have to have a degree and then I'll figure it out afterwards. And at the end of that study, which was comparable to a master study basically back then, different title but comparable, I had to write that master thesis. And back then I felt like, okay, half a year investment into one topic. So what should it be? I don't want to suffer for half a year on some super boring topic for me. And back then I dared for one of the first times to really step up and ask my professor back then if it would be okay to write about computer games in China, because I love computer games, always did.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like maybe nobody ever wrote about this. So just asking that question, where I felt like, oh, he's going to say no, it's not going to work, but I'm going to ask anyways. I think that was probably a pivotal moment for me, because I did ask and he said, oh, yeah, that's a great topic. Nobody wrote about this. Off you go. And I was like, oh really?
Wow.
Can I? So I could actually invest my half year for something I actually liked to research about. And that gave me courage and hope. How about I, use the same courage again for finding my first job after university? Because I did those working student jobs in HR and personal development. It was okay. It wasn't bad. But then I felt like, what if I apply in the computer games industry? And I just stare, because I would regret if I don't.
Well, and you had a thesis, or you had at least
And
written
exactly.
about it. So if you write about it, and you did that in Chinese then, or
No.
no?
I
No.
wrote it in German. I had to also read sort of some Chinese sources, of course, because not all material is published in other languages. But I still wrote it in German, so it's not to that difficulty level of writing it even in Chinese. I wouldn't have been able to do that back then. But I did do that, and I could. I just hoped, like, okay, let me just try and dare. Again, I was sort of expecting them they're going to say no. I haven't studied game design or all the other things where actually people paid privately also for those schools. I just have that thesis basically, and like I'm just going to ask. I'm just going to apply for those positions. And really, to my surprise, I got 2 acceptances, and I was like, really?
Hey.
I would have never thought that. But just daring again helped me further. And that's also how I found my first job after university, in a software development company, in my first software development team. And suddenly I was working in tech, and I was like, oh, I can work here?
So it's twice asking or daring to go for a dream at, I would say, still a pretty young age, because if you're studying, if you go for your first job, I would say that's probably earlier than most people sometimes dare to do. So that is very nice, if that is a possibility to have that. I can definitely think that's a big boost for your self-confidence, and a big energy boost, I would say.
It was indeed, and I really needed that confidence boost as well. Like, I mean, I have similar situations over the years where I struggled with my own confidence, and then found ways to gain more, and found ways to be okay with what I know and what I don't know yet, and that I can actually grow further and know more, because I'm basically a self-learner this way, right? So But I also figured this is how a lot of people learn, and this is a lot more relevant than to what I'm currently trying to solve, compared to what I actually studied. Because actually, I did have computer science as a minor, but honestly, it was just a handful of courses, not really much. But what really
Still
prepared me,
more than
but
people
still,
who, I mean,
exactly,
I want to be careful that you don't downplay yourself, because again, you did study part of it. You were already playing
sure,
with computers from a very young age. That also means probably that you were not scared of a computer in a way that
true,
sometimes many people, I've seen, yeah, people my age that
yeah.
computers now people are less afraid of phones than people used to be of computers, I would say. But for you, growing up with computers around the house, it's just like any other toy, I would say, or things around you. Yeah.
I was always fascinated about them. So like now looking back, for me, it makes absolutely sense. Just back then, it didn't occur to me that this was, yeah,
Hmm.
so it was already there, right? And I didn't believe in myself as much as I do now, because of course now I have a lot more years also in it. I can prove to myself, basically. I have the validation from outside and so on. But back then it was quite daring. And still it allowed me to end up in tech, in my first months as a game designer, actually, which very quickly then changed into a testing and quality role, which fit also way better to what I brought and to that generalist me. And I really, really enjoyed that. And at the moment in time, I really felt like I found a place where I actually like to be. I like to grow. I love to learn, and I can learn a lot every day. And I can imagine doing this for the rest of my life. And it was like mind
Wow.
blowing. Yeah, it was
If
really
you
mind blowing for
already
me.
see this in a very early age in your career, that yeah, I think many people still wonder. Me included, I'm still wondering what will I do next. I mean,
Yeah,
I love what I'm doing, but at the same time, like I can see myself moving in other kind of things. So if you very early on in your career, you already feel like, hey, I'm in the right place. That's really nice. Um, and I wonder also if you want to share when you talk for when you start writing that the paper, when you apply for that job, how is your family supporting you at that time? Because you said you were not so much supported by school and others, but how was it at home? If you care to share about this.
I think how I grew up was a big part of, that I had the courage to dare, because I'm very privileged, in that sense that I had a supportive family. They were really open for different kind of career paths. They would have even also allowed me to study art, because that was in my head for a long time. So they were super supportive when it came to education and when it came to career. So also working in the games industry, right, wasn't a problem for them. They actually cheered me on. And I don't take this for granted, because I've seen so many of my friends' families who were definitely the opposite. So I think part of why I am where I am now is because I had that support and I was allowed to dare.
So indeed, there was. Yeah, and I think that's why I'm asking, because sometimes we don't always realize what kind of support we have, and that that support is important, but we don't always realize it. Yeah, that we have that, but then later on in life, we
Yeah.
sometimes realize, hey, I did have that kind of thing. But of course, the naysayers always get more attention from us, typically.
Yeah.
And we don't always see it. And yeah, my parents support me because they're my parents. I've heard these critics from my children as much as I'm
Yeah.
supporting them. Like, yeah, but you're my parents. You have to do this. It's like, yeah, but
No.
no. And it's so yeah. Um, that paper, is that still? Can we find it?
I think it is like, if if you go to a German university, you could basically lend it, right? Because it's somewhere in my old university's bib, basically. So the library should have it, but I don't think they ever digitized it. So, or at least I'm not aware if they actually published these kind of theses online.
Yeah, it's
It's quite a
probably
while ago, so maybe not yet.
maybe it's searchable in depending on
It could
if you
be.
were at the university and things
There
like
it
that.
should be.
So
Yes, yes.
so yeah, but okay. Well, let's move to that next question, because I
Yep.
think we kind of also talked a little bit already about, we talked about some of the challenge that you overcome, but what is currently your biggest challenge, at least the biggest one that you want to share openly on the internet, and why is that a good thing for you?
So I really enjoy, I would say, still doing sort of yearly personal challenges. So that fits right into that question, because my current personal challenge is around my inner critic and keeping that calm enough for the times where it should stay calm, where nothing is to be criticized, and have it alert me in times that I should really be alerted of something important to look at and to learn from. And staying calm with especially my personal growth is really sort of my theme of the year, because as I shared, I've done a lot of those personal challenges over the years for personal growth for a lot of different reasons. And especially the last years, I really overdid it. So this year I felt, okay, wait, I need to regain my energy sources. I need to do less and be okay with it. And I still struggle with that, by the way. So it started in January. Now we're in April. And I still struggle to say no to certain opportunities, to stop certain endeavors that I started and I still enjoy and I still like to do it. And it's often collaborations with different kinds of folks that I also really like to see and work with together, but it accumulates. And then at some point, it just becomes too much. So this kind of struggle to still proceed gradually and iteratively, step by step, with growing personally and growing on sort of subjects, while also staying calm enough with not overdoing and keeping my critic at bay, is really occupying my head these days, and it's still a struggle. So I'm going to be curious where I'm going to be end of October. That's how long the challenge will be. But right now, I'm right in the middle of it.
And so, and that second part, why is that a good thing for you?
The good thing is I really felt I needed to solve this for me and for myself, because without any energy, we can only go so long, and I want to not burn out and lose all that energy to invest in endeavors that are dear to my heart, but actually come back to a sustainable pace. So I keep that energy and build it up continuously as I go as well. And also do things that are just joyful for, just for the sake of joy and not for anything else. Like, for example, playing computer games, which I again neglected for way too long, although I really love it. It has no other purpose than joy for myself. So finding that balance so I keep the energy that I can then invest in good endeavors, I think is really crucial for me this year, and a good thing to learn, especially considering also the state of the world, where I know I will need
All
a lot
right.
of that energy.
And I think you're not alone in that.
No.
Indeed, that's. I think this is. It's totally different than 5 years ago, but
Yeah.
yeah, it reminds me on that surviving and realizing what's happening in the world. Yeah, it takes a lot of energy for many of us, because every time we think, okay, this is really bad, and the next day or the
Yeah.
week after, something else is blowing up, or is happening. So I can definitely, just for the record, we're recording this in the beginning of April because this will be published a little bit later. I have no idea how the world will be by the time this is published, but I can definitely see that. Well, just in the first couple of months of this year, the world is completely different than it was half a year or even just a couple of months ago. So that I can definitely see that all of us, we need energy for that.
Yes.
And that's that is in that sense a very smart way of looking at things. What else we will have. Um, that is yeah, an interesting way of looking at that. Let's put it like that. I want to move to that next question because I feel with a lot of what you do, there is in a more relaxed way, but there still is a lot of drive, a lot of passion. Do you know where that drive and passion is coming from? Is that because if you
Yeah.
listen back to, you said, okay, maybe when I was in school, people didn't really support me in going into tech, for example. Was little Lisi already somebody who was that passionate as she is today?
I think I was passionate, but about different things, I guess. So, but that's probably due to being a journalist in all kinds of ways, basically.
But that passion was already there.
I think the passion was already there. It also transferred into volleyball, for example, right, which is like a completely different area, but I'm also super passionate there. I think what I like things that I take on, where my heart speaks to it, basically, I can be really passionate about. And in the area of tech, I think that's really doing great things together with great folks and bringing value to other people. So this kind of evolutionary process of working together, trying to always become a bit better and building things better and learning and growing as we go, this is a huge source of energy for me. It's in the area of software and tech and now security as well. So this kind of drive, or what drives me there, however, can only give me energy in case we have that kind of co-created, safe enough space so that we can really grow together. Because if that space is, let's say, toxic, like if you're working in a toxic system, it will probably drain my energy a lot. So it's the opposite. But if things are working well, we have a good foundation. It doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, we're not going to jump to perfection either. But where I have like the honest observation that we're here and we all make an effort to always move it a bit better and push it to where we could be, and have that like also optimism and drive to get there, that's a huge driver for me.
And what I'm hearing is that improvement drive, like you said, also was there in volleyball. I can definitely see if you're a team sport that, yeah, even if you win a match, whatever it might be, okay, we want to win better next time. We want to, or improve yourself, and is that, and if you're, like you said, you're doing that for your whole life or a big part of your life, that is something. Was that encouraged by trainers and coaches, or was that again from the very first time that you played, that you already had that, like, okay, next week I want to be better, or how was that?
I think it did start with myself and the closest people I started to play that sport with. One is my best friend, actually, that I also got to know a lot better through volleyball, actually, also way back in time. And we both had that drive of always trying to become better and better and not stop anywhere and not be satisfied with what we already achieved, but always become better. And the coach that we had back then did encourage that as well. So it was also, so we had the people around us who also were driven. We had the environment that gave us the space to actually practice also a lot. And I had training times and a coach who also tried to really better us. And then we had opponents as well, right? Because also here you learn a lot from them as well, because
Of
if they're
course.
good, you want to be better, right? It's a play sport as well, right? It's like you try to compete in a sporty, friendly manner, of course, so always within the boundaries of decent human behavior, but still you're trying to be better. And that really, really helped back then. The main jump was when I changed clubs, which again provided me a space where I could thrive in what I'm doing there, have even better coaches, even better training opportunities, even better people to play with as well, which also again betters you. But I think initially, yeah, it was my own drive. Like, oh, this is because I actually was never a sporty person before that. But when I discovered volleyball as a sport, I was like, this is mine. This is the one
All
where
right.
I can actually, which I really like, and where I can become better.
That's really interesting that you add that, because indeed it's I think many people think from themselves they're not sporty until they discover some kind of thing like, okay, this is the thing that works for me, and it could be team sport, it could be something else, but
Yeah,
at some point you might discover something that is indeed, hey, this is it for me.
yeah.
So that's and you talked about training and practice. How many times do you still practice these times? If you still play, you said, is how much time do you spend on practicing in a week?
So unfortunately, not as much anymore as back in the years when I played a lot more in a more competitive
Yeah,
manner.
there is your
So
life is becoming much more complicated, I guess. So
it
that's why I'm
is,
asking.
it is, and I'm also growing older, which means I, can't compete as much anymore as back then. So nowadays it's only once per week, which is not much at all. Interestingly, we're still getting better, because usually if you only train once per week, you're gonna get worse. If you train twice per week, like as a sort of guideline, you can sort of maintain your level. And to really get better, you usually have to train more times. And back then, I did train more times, but nowadays with once per week, it's sometimes difficult because you only have so many trainings per year, and then there's the season, and then you have the games already, and you have to train the people individually within groups, basically as a whole team. There's also not only the techniques but also the tactics at each level and so on. So there's a lot of things we hope for, like we would need to train, but you'll never have enough time, so you need to prioritize heavily. And with once per week, it's even harder.
And do you, next to that, do still, I don't know, some kind of training for level of, for your body itself without training for volleyball?
Yeah, I'm trying to always go running as well, but which was always for volleyball basically. So I'm really driven by volleyball to do more sports. Same with strength training and these kind of things. So nowadays I'm trying to also increase that kind of training again, because the last years I reduced it a lot, and I really felt it with my physical and mental health. So also here, age comes into play. I mean, you can always learn a lot of things also at high age, but you'll need to practice. And without the practice, it's not going to get better. Surprise.
Yeah.
same, same in other areas of
But,
life
but
as
but
well.
these kind
So
of trainings, I guess you can do much more on your own at home, or yeah, so
yeah,
in your own time, than if
you
it's
can.
training with a team. You need to do, yeah, basically you need your whole team, and you all need to practice at the same time. I
That's
guess you
true.
can arrange a little bit more.
Which is, however, also a positive thing, because if you have training with your whole team, you're expected to be there. So there's no
Ah,
excuse. And it really helps for me to have that accountability part, where I can't just say, oh, today I'm tired, or, because And usually what happens is I go, although I'm tired, and afterwards I feel a lot better, and it was fun and everything, and my body is happy. But if I'm only accountable with myself, doesn't work.
It's very
well with
tempting
me. Yeah.
to stay home or to indeed. I think that is not just you. I think many people recognize that. That's indeed,
Team sport
and
helps.
team sports helps in that case. All right, let's move to because we're already talking a little bit about achievement. So, what do you consider your biggest achievement so far? And maybe before we jump into that, basically, this is your moment to brag and to be really proud. Is that easy for you as a person to brag and to be proud?
It got easier through practice, but it was deliberate practice because I grew up with like bragging is a bad thing, and especially women don't brag. Like no, it's not like acceptable, socially acceptable. But through safe spaces, where explicit bragging was allowed and encouraged, I had a training space actually to just become better at stating my accomplishments and being okay with that as well. And then I practiced also a lot on social media, which is sort of then the public space, which is not always that safe, but I did learn a lot better to acknowledge the accomplishments that I had. So when the question now is like, what's my biggest achievement? Like, I'm thinking of a few things, but I think the top one was probably winning a community award a few years back from another conference, the Agile Tasking Days, where like now they don't have that award series anymore, but like for many years, like every year, you could nominate a person that you want to vote for, like from the community, to be recognized with this kind of community award. And it really happened that people did vote for me in 1 year, and it was for me incredible, absolutely incredible. It's still here on my desk, honestly, because I need that reminder that this actually happened. So this is probably one of the biggest achievements so far, that it seems I had impact on their life so much that they did want to vote for me, which still feels strange to speak out loud. But yeah, that's definitely something I'm still astonished and still glad about.
And you say so glad, and then there is a big smile or a big laugh.
Yeah.
So it's it still brings you joy, I think,
Oh
right?
yeah, it does definitely. And I've also spoken back then with a lot of the people to really try to understand, like, why did they vote for me, what made them grant me that kind of award. And I really remember those conversations fondly, and I'm still very appreciative of that, because yeah, that was very, very touching. It was
And
2019, I think.
when you say you remember these conversations, did you write anything of that down?
Oh yeah, I did. I have. So that's also part of the practicing bragging part and acknowledging accomplishments. I really learned to write things down, have sort of a track record or statements, what people said about me, what they appreciated in the community space, but also at work. So that's definitely one of my biggest helpers for myself when it comes to performance reviews or these kind of growth reviews or whatnot, to really write these things down whenever somebody acknowledge something. Hey, that was great because it helped me do X, Y, Z, to write it down. And same I did with that award. Anything that people told me back then, I still have the document. So whenever I would be in a phase where I'm more down or I doubt myself, I can look at those things and maybe not instantly believe in myself, because that's not how it works, but it's proof that this happened.
There is, and that there is so a counter medicine or counterbalance
Exactly.
to whatever you're feeling at that time. I'm asking
Exactly.
because I've heard this already a couple of times from people, that started to collect these kind of things and keep a kind of whatever, a document, a book, a folder, a place on their website where they can keep what people talk about them. And I think it's a really good practice that most of us don't do enough. Because let's face it, all of us, we have moments that we might feel down and that we're in a less, well, maybe not all of us, but let's say most people or many people have that at some point, that they can use so much more energy, and then reading some of the things that people are saying. We could also recall people and say, okay, I'm down, but probably most of us won't do that. When the moment that we need most help, we'll probably reach out less to people. And so then just is a good kind of replacement for these kind of things. So that sounds like a very nice achievement, having such an award. And did I understand correctly that you were totally not aware that people that you would receive this? Or how did that go in practice?
Yeah, so I mean, there's always speculation who's going like, or back then when this award was granted, like who's going to be it this year, like who helped me most, right? I was also voting for another person, and I was quite oblivious to the fact that so many, like I heard from a few people, oh, I'm going to vote for you, and I was like, yeah, I mean that's nice of you to say, right? It's like it sort of didn't really realize that they actually meant this as much as they did, and how many people did. And it only dawned on me when I sat there on this on the evening where this award was granted, and they usually made it like a bit of a dramatic scenery, so not sharing the name instantly, but sharing a few facts about the person who won. And I was like, this sounds like me. And it was like, no, it can't be, and it was like sort of, and the person in front of me was like, it's happening. And I was like, no, come on. And then it really said my name. I was like, wait, am I now supposed to go on stage? So that's, it was really in that moment where it was like, you really voted for me?
That's a very touching story. So thank you for sharing
amazing.
that. That sounds like indeed something really nice to happen. And indeed, if you're sitting there and like, oh wait, are people talking about me? That is well, one of the nicest things that people can do for you, I would say. And unfortunately, for most of us, these kind of nice things people say at our funeral, and so it's much better that people say it to you when you're still alive and give you some kind of reward. So that's I think we should do that much more, not just for rewards, but telling people indeed how much we like them, or how they inspire us, or whatever that we value for other people.
Absolutely agree.
Let's move on to that next question. Do you have a personal agility tip to share?
Well, I'd say experimentation for the win. Because I already shared I have those personal challenges. Like I think I'm now in the 7th challenge already, like these longer ones basically. And I used also experimentation for working through them. I might not always succeed a challenge, but like helping me try things and see if they would validate my hypothesis or not, and how to adapt. I did this like in these bigger scales, also for big company initiatives, but also like sometimes super small, like just today. What can I try slightly differently today and see where it brings me? Maybe it's slightly better than yesterday, and I already win. So experimentation was like a red thread for me, especially during the last 7 years, I would say. In all kinds of scopes, small and big, sometimes really formulated, sometimes super lightweight. never super scientific, so I don't have like two different groups and can compare them in that sense, but still daring to try things and be open about the outcome, and also be okay with learning from failure, because failure in the sense of experimentation doesn't mean like it's a mistake or it's a human failure in that sense, but it's an opportunity for learning as well, even if it didn't go in the way that I expected it to go. So yeah, that's definitely one of my main drivers to become better, to try different things and be curious about the outcome instead of disappointed that it doesn't go the way that I expected it to be.
Mm-hmm. And could you give some examples on things that you did experiment with previously, or people that you helped out experimented with?
So one of my lightweight ones in a work context was a few years ago. I had just started on a new team as a quality engineer on a software development team. So that was the context. I was previously working in a very collaborative team. So we were pairing a lot. We were also working as an ensemble, like more people working on the same topic, same time, same place. And I was coming from the context, entering this very, very different team that was made up more like of a lot of soloists, people who were even by the system deliberately kept apart in the beginning. So there was like incentive actually to not work together, which is something that we broke up over the time. But entering that context was like, oh, okay, this is very different. I have to approach this very differently than I did with my former team. But I still wanted to do good stuff together, to learn and grow. And I felt pairing would be something that would be valuable. But I already tried speaking about pairing and like trying this out, and everybody was just staring blankly at me, not really understanding what I'm even talking about. So no bad intentions, just not they couldn't relate to what I'm speaking about. So I tried a little personal experiment. In that case, I didn't even write it down. Just for me, I felt like, okay, I tried speaking about it, didn't work. What if I don't speak about it, but it sort of lured them into that situation, and then they can see for themselves if it's going to work or not. So if they benefit from it as well, because I don't want to force people to something that they don't benefit. I just strongly believe that there is benefit in that because I've seen it before. So what I tried was stopping talking about pairing, but after a daily stand-up, I asked one of the persons where I worked on a change that we worked together on. I just asked him like, hey, can you shortly stay? I have a question about this change we're working on. And I said like, yeah, sure, of course, no problem. So we stayed in the call. We were all working remotely, so we both stayed in the call, and I started sharing my screen and asking my question. He answered, and he could have stopped there, but then I just started interacting with the system, asking my next question, and we got into a conversation, and I was continuing interacting with the system. We were basically getting into pair testing and observing the system behavior and having a lot different conversations through that, and raising different questions and seeing different behavior together suddenly, then just that initial question would have answered. And the interesting part was like, I wasn't speaking about pairing or whatever. I just tried to create that situation where we just naturally do it. And the interesting part was like this continued like for half an hour. And we had so many more insights in that short time than before I tried to get out of people in like days. And that person did tell me like, oh, that was super interesting. That like they realized in that moment already, like, oh, we did something different, and it brought value. We could clarify a few things a lot faster without too much back and forth. And I felt like, okay, let's see what happens. And I
But
tried it with
You afterwards, you didn't say this is pairing or
No,
anything
no,
like
nothing,
that. No.
nothing yet. And then I did this also with a few other people. And the interesting observation that came from me, because I tried not to speak about this at all, but just trying to get them into situations and see if they benefit from it. And then, like a week after, I saw people actually come to me and say, "Hey, can we have a look at this together? Because like last time that was so cool. Can we have a look together and just clarify all the questions that you have?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, absolutely, we can." So they actually pulled me then actively for pairing, also without even knowing that this is what I meant when I always talked about pairing. And only a few months afterwards, I sort of when this became sort of a practice already, I put a word on it. But that was one of the experiments where I felt like, okay, let's just try to catch them in that moment where they're already together and get them into a situation where they can experience it for themselves without, without pressure, without any term that they might not be familiar with, and just seeing if they benefit from it. In that case, it worked. It could have not worked as well, just as well.
Mm-hmm.
So these kind of little experiments, trying things a bit differently, trying different approaches how to convey things. It's been one of my main means in agile teams.
I like it, and I'm really glad I asked the question because it's a nice example of yeah, making the work speak for itself, and yeah, indeed trying to convince people like pairing and whatever we call it, like people, and then you do it, and it's like, hey, this is actually a good way of collaborating, and it, like you say, it's working remotely as well, and if you would have asked, okay, can we pair on this, people might have looked like, okay, what do you
Yes.
want? And now you just basically ask for help and then do the thing that, so that's really is interesting. So thank you for, and the tip, and then the real example about it. Let's move to that next question. What have you learned about remote working? And you just gave an example of remote working.
Yes.
Is it, well, maybe I want also to know, when did you start with remote working? A lot of us, we started in 2020 for obvious reasons, which we're not going to go into detail. But did you do remote working already before that, or how was that for you?
I'm also one of those who started remote working exactly at that moment in time. I never could have imagined it before, but once I was in that situation, I realized how much better it is than compared to a hybrid, like a distributed setup. Because I was working in a distributed setup where like most part of the team was in one location and one or two people in others. So you have that kind of situation where you always will be in big meeting rooms, trying to be in group conference calls, and not everybody can see each other clearly or hear each other clearly because the sound system in the meeting room might not always be perfect, or at least back then we had a lot of struggle with that. Maybe you just see like black shadows in front of like a very light window with like a lot of sunlight, so you don't even see the person. It was quite a struggle. Plus, having big part of the team in one location, there's a lot of informal conversations going around. You always have to actively remember to share with those persons who are not in the room, which led to a lot of conflict back then. Once we all suddenly were remote, it was solved. It was such a revelation for me that, oh, wait, this could really work. Because suddenly we are all on a level playing field. We all have the same access. We're just one click away from speaking with each other in various constellations, and everybody is treated more equitably. So that was the first realization where I felt like, oh, wait, this could work. And shortly after, I had my second one, which was that my team constellation completely changed. We had like 5 people leaving, 5 people coming in, and it was like, oh, okay, and we have to now get to know each other completely remotely. And it worked so well to really create those relationships and foster them and like grow deep and collaborate really closely, which was really something that I couldn't have imagined before having that experience myself. So that was sort of, a real self-revelation that when I finally met those people for the first time in real life after 1 year, of working like that. I knew those people. I just didn't know how tall they were. That was the funny thing.
That's the one thing that we hear a lot, that
Yeah,
on screen we all look more or less the same height,
exactly.
uh, and that
Yeah.
that is
So
something that is very hard to know. Um, so that is indeed, yeah, like you say, a way to learn that, hey, okay, we can learn how people are, but there are limits, like knowing the height or something, or people would need to go back and forth, and even then, even if they would give you the height in centimeters or meters, you would still not realize how big that is, or how the team is compared to one another. um, because we might see, basically just talking heads on a screen, that all look very familiar. So thank you for sharing that, because it's indeed something. It's not the first time that people mention this here, but it is an important thing to realize, that it's it is again something different, that we don't realize that. Um, are there things that you learn about people remotely that you wouldn't learn if you see them face to face in the office?
I think I learned more about like how their daily life situation is, with all that
Hmm.
comes with like schedules they have, not only living situation, because obviously we're not, you know, luring into their living rooms or something, but it's more like the daily rhythm of life, and also being considerate to adapt to each other's needs, like, I don't know, package delivery, or getting kids from school, or whatever it is basically that just occurs naturally in your living environment as well, like your home office in that case, that you wouldn't see when you're working together at an office. Same as like you have, like, for example, one of our frequent conversation starters was also like, what are you drinking, right? Because you're at home, it's not like the office coffee machine or something where everybody might also bond over, because I don't know, maybe the coffee is exceptionally good or bad, or you're not a coffee drinker, but that's the only thing that's offered, or whatever. At home, it could, like, there's a whole variety, because people like choose freely what they actually want to drink or consume, also as food, and that is something that I wouldn't have learned as easily without seeing what they're doing. So in that case, the prerequisite is, of course, that we already have a good enough base so that we can actually do video calls. So not only just voice alone, I really struggle with that, although I totally get it, and everybody has different needs. It's not something I require for anybody to put their video on. It does really help me, but there's a lot of aspects to consider with that. But once we have that base where we actually are freely in calls together and have these kind of conversations, and also deliberate icebreakers sometimes, because we had like deliberate moments where we said, this is just our social hour of the week. We're going to play games. We're going to do icebreaker questions together, which are fun. We're going to whatever, or just share stories. This is something that sometimes can occur in the office, but not as. I think I learned a lot more actually when like about people personally when working from home. Now I'm back at the office for some time, and you see sort of how it was back then, and it's a huge change again for me to adapt suddenly to an office environment again. And I realize how well suited remote working is for me.
It's and I think that's why I asked a little bit, because indeed different people prefer one or the other, but sometimes people think only the good or the bad things. But I think there's just, on both sides, we miss something, like the height of
Yes.
people. But then, knowing and indeed looking into the lives of people, even if it's in a limited way,
Sure.
it's less limited than what we see in the office. Because I do remember in the beginning of the pandemic, cats and children were walking in, and
Exactly.
most of the time people felt embarrassed, but the rest of people watching like, no, actually, now you've been talking about your cat for a long time, now I can finally see it. Or same about children. So yeah, there was nothing to be embarrassed. Many of us had children that walked in or had, and so yeah, there is that other part that we learn a little bit about that. So that is indeed an interesting part. I want to move to that next question. What's a book that you have read and that you want to talk about? And I think you have a couple of books that you wanted to bring here.
Yes. So, I mean, I've read a lot of books, but especially in that area of like tech and socio-technical systems in general. Like, what kind of books really influenced me? I thought like what to bring here, and I think the main book or books basically, because it's a series, that had influenced my career was Agile Testing from Janet Gregory and Lisa Crispin.
And this is the book with the two
That's
ladies, and both of them have been on the show. So
Yeah.
Janet's been on the 31, and Lisa, actually Lisa, I've only recently talked to. At the
Nice.
moment that we're talking, it's not published, but I think I will publish it at 176. So that will be before your conversation. So it will still take a while. But yeah, a really wonderful book. Same thing with more agile testing and indeed a couple of others. What you want people, because that book is, I don't know how old it is, but it's already quite a while. What did you like about that book so much?
I think it was so influential for me back then because this was during the first job after university. I was working at a very little startup, so think like 10 to max 20 people. And it was a startup with the actual startup roller coaster of you never know how long we're going to make it. Do we still have money? You know, who has to go? Can somebody come? Can I stay even? And like just that period taught me a lot. And we're actually still, I'm still meeting my former colleagues from back there like regularly every year, because it's just been a really influential time for my career. And remember, that was like the very first job where I dared to apply in that industry and dared to join tech basically. So it was really important for me. But we obviously didn't have money. So I couldn't go to a conference or anything, and that was completely out of the question. However, my back then product owner and CTO, basically, because little startup, they tried to get some books for us to still help us grow, and like, because we're all young, we're all trying to do better and figure this out basically. And what he brought for me was Agile testing. So that was the very first moment. I didn't know Lisa, I didn't know Janet yet. I just saw that book and I was like, okay, sounds interesting, sounds relevant to our situation, but it's like a huge book. And I have to admit, and I mean, I told them as well, I only read the summary at the end at that moment in time. Like there was like 12 principles or something, like really condensed, summarized at the end as sort of key learnings. But just reading those little snippets was so inspirational for me, where I felt like this is something I can instantly try out with my team and experiment on, basically. Like share the pain of regression testing was definitely one of the things I tried, and it worked so well. I became a real fan. I did read the whole book, of course, in the end. And I also started to follow them on social media, which was basically also my entry to social media, to getting to know a lot more contacts, to getting introduced to the world of conferences as well. Because again, Lisa and Janet were posting about Agile Testing Days, the same conference where later on I got that reward, right? So it really all fits together. And it did all start with that book. So that's why I felt like this is probably the most influential book for my whole career, because it set me up for all that path next to work, and set me up for growing in so many ways in community.
And yeah, Agile Testing Days. It's one of these conferences I've heard already so many things, good things about it. All the stories, the parties, everything, but also the conversations. It's one of the things, one of these conferences that's high on my list of wanting to go to at some point. But yeah, so many people are that have been there are so loving it. Okay, let's move, because I know you have some more books. What's
Yes.
a next book that you want to talk about?
So another one, because I did start in those testing quality roles and worked there actually for a long time, because it really opened up a pathway for me as a journalist. The next one is Explore It by Elizabeth Hendrickson, which was also super influential for me, because it's like quite a lean book in that case. So it's not as big as more agile testing. But it also was very practical, hands-on when it came to exploratory testing and what exploration means, and like how to think in new ways to figure out, to learn about this system that we're building, about the software that we're building, and what's actually valuable information for us for making the next decision. So to make an informed decision, which is exactly what we're trying to achieve, so we can build more quality products. And that was just so on point, and I really loved that kind of book. I actually also built workshops then for my teams or across teams actually at my companies, based on Elizabeth techniques that she shared and insights that she shared. And I think it really helped me then also build own workshop content and everything afterwards. So when I met her, actually, like I think 2 years ago for the first time, it was one of my big Shiro moments as well, because she was quite influential for me.
Yeah, and she's a wonderful woman. I talked with her as one of the first interviews for the podcast, because yeah, I've met her. I think 2009, 2010. I don't remember anymore. Where she won an award at the conference, and she actually came at the conference. She spoke, and then she had to go back home, go back to a customer for work, and they called her like, yeah, you have the award. And she came back just in time for the award ceremony, where yeah, we really had a great conversation. It's yeah, indeed, it's a wonderful person to have.
Absolutely.
And indeed a great book to learn about exploratory testing. So yeah, really happy that that book is also now once here, because yeah, there's of course many books, but that's a great book that definitely deserves some attention for more people. But I know you have some more books. So what's the next book?
The next one that was influential for me was Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Which was, exactly.
I think recently he passed away. Well, recently, a couple of months ago, I think. What do you like so much about that book?
This was probably my first introduction to cognitive biases and how models how our brain works. And I mean, yes, models are flawed, and like also research will always improve over years. But back then it really opened up for me ways of thinking, like observing my own behavior and like on a meta level, and realizing better, like step by step, why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I'm like doing things how I'm doing them, and so on. And also realizing in that in those kind of team dynamic situations that I talked about, because biases are a human thing, a very human thing. It's a mechanism that we all need and draw from, but they can also lead us astray, like heavily. And this is definitely the book that introduced me to that whole part of research. I can't claim I'm an expert, but this was a really good read to get started with it.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, because yeah, it's not an easy book to read, I would
No.
say, but yeah, it's definitely worth taking the time. Yeah, it's and many people think they understand, but actually, yeah, when you start reading it, then you learn at so
Oh yeah.
much deeper levels. So definitely worth reading this book as well. So let's see what is the next book, because I know you still have two more that you wanted to
Two
bring
more.
on.
The next one is So You Want to Talk About Race by
Mhm.
Ijoma Oluo. And this was a book that I read in 2020. And it was one of those, it was definitely a time for me when I felt like, oh, for years I realized like there's these lots of topics like racism, like sexism, or like other systems of oppression basically that I'm aware of, sort of, but like, and I should learn more about it. But I sort of always went around and like not wanting to get uncomfortable. And
Mm.
in 2020, I said like, okay, enough is enough. There were so many happenings. I mean, honestly, that was like it wasn't only 2020. It's been happening for centuries, many centuries. It's not a new thing, but it was one of those awakening moments also for me. Where I'm like, okay, I really have to face this now and really come to like unlearn, like realize what I need to unlearn even. Learn
Mhm.
about these systems, learn about privilege as well. Was it what I mentioned as well before? Learn about racism, learn about this social, this construct basically, this not social, sociological construct basically that was invented to oppress people. What are the symptoms, how it can be observed in everyday little moments. It doesn't have to be big things, it can be super small. What are microaggressions, all these kind of things. And I mean, there's a lot of books out there that are really to recommend. And I also actually started a resource collection of all the things that helped me and that I gathered since that time. But that was one of the books that I would definitely recommend also as an amazing starter, because it was very tangible from the perspective of someone who is herself affected as well. And that was yeah, definitely one of those moments to that led me to change my own behavior as well. So that's why I felt it was very influential for me to grow as a person, but also then see it in all the work situations and like everywhere, like because it's everywhere, and tech is not neutral or apolitical or anything. We build those systems that actually
Mhm.
influence again um, in all the ways, and if we don't speak up in the right moments, we will be part of the problem. And I wanted to become part of the solution, and I'm still learning. I'm still on a learning journey. I can't claim I'm ever going to stop learning there, but that book, definitely a great starter.
Okay, thank you for bringing that, indeed, bringing that so important topic, and I would say in 2025 even more important
Yes.
than before, because this definitely is a year that it feels that we're going backwards
Oh
on
yeah.
sexism, on racism, and on so many different kind of levels. So even more important to be allies and to keep. Yeah, indeed, like you say, in tech, making sure that we help to create the right choices and stand up for the right choices. So thank you for bringing that book. So I've read a couple similar kind of books, but that's a book that I haven't read. So definitely add it to my list of to read books. And then you had one last book, and I think this
Yes.
is, yeah, more moving more into the direction that you're moving in these days, I would say.
Yes, so this is on application security because the book is Alice and Bob Learn Application Security by
Hmm.
Tanya Janka. And she's actually just published the sequel, so Alice and Bob Learn Secure Coding, which I haven't read yet, but it's definitely on my list. Tanya Janka was one of those people that I followed early on to learn more about security, as already shared. I've always been interested and enthusiastic about security. And over many, many years, I always learned more and more and more and dove deeper into that area. And now I made the jump basically to switch really roles and become a security engineer. But that book was definitely part of this journey of growing into ways how we can build more secure software from idea to production, not only like afterwards trying to sort of force it in, because that doesn't work with quality, and security is a big part of quality. Doesn't work there either. So I felt there's a lot of what I've seen we're working in, like in generally in quality engineering and testing. I've seen also for the security side so far, as I learned through people like Tanya here, who shared their experience from becoming, like I think she was a long time software developer and then switched to application security to really help teams figure out how they can, like what they need to do to not leave the door wide open, basically, to make it harder, to make their product less attractive for attackers. Not only just be aware of like, hey, this is a vulnerability, but what is it actually I need to do to really close this gap? And that's again something very, very dear to my heart. So that book was is a really nice one to set up the foundations for application security, and I'm pretty sure the sequel now that focuses on secure coding is even more tangible than to teach people like how to actually fix those gaps. So that's definitely what I'm going to read next.
So definitely interesting things to learn for all of us. So thank you for bringing such a large list of books, of interesting books to do. So definitely, for me, worth the time to listen to this list. I want to move to always for me one of the most interesting questions about what question do you think I should also ask you, and what is the answer?
So my current thought would be, how can we make ourselves and other people more aware of the systems that are around us, that we're part of, and what kind of impact they have? So this is also sort of connected to what I just shared regarding systems of oppression or systems of teams as well, and the dynamics, right? Cultures in a company can be very different from company A to company B, to like these kind of systems that we're in, to become aware of them and to also learn how we can influence them. I don't have the perfect answer there, but this is, I think, something that I would love to hear more people share their thoughts on.
So you say you don't have the answer to, but if you would start to give some answer, where would that answer start with for you?
I think it would start in things that I've seen myself, how people approach that, like how to make people aware of these kind of systems. And I've seen people addressing them out loud and like stating what they observe. This could be also like when we're thinking now about a software development team, maybe you have, I don't know, 5 developers, and what about like how many topics do we start working on at the same time, like work in progress? It's also something is that you need to be considerate that if everybody of those 5 people start one topic in parallel, we have 5 topics in progress for the whole team. So that team perspective, instead of like everybody for them saying like, but I'm just working on one thing, is actually not completely true, because as a team we're working on 5 things and we need each other. Otherwise we wouldn't be needing to working in a team. So there's a good reason these days that we do need to work in a team, because it's way too complex for people to work on their own.
That would be like having your volleyball team play with 3 or 5 balls at the same time. Like everybody has their own ball, but yeah, okay.
Exactly. It doesn't work this way anymore. And then if people start picking up more topics because they start to wait for feedback from someone else, oh, let me just fill that gap with something else, it's just making it worse, right? So this kind of systemic problem I saw being addressed by stating things out loud and showcasing people like what this means, and it can work. Other things, like with the peering example that I mentioned, right, is more about having people experience what's happening, where systems become more prominent. But maybe it's also learning more structurally about systems thinking, which I've also seen a lot of people start nowadays and publish more. So I think that is a very interesting area to learn more for ourselves, and then think about how we can convey it to others. These are things that I've seen. I've also had a few initiatives where I try to sort of only shape the system a bit, like not to replace it with something completely new or break it apart, because usually systems are designed for doing exactly what they do, and they're also designed for upholding themselves. So it's sometimes really, really hard to tear something down. But just shaping a little bit, like chipping away, replacing little parts, that sometimes really worked for me. Or changing language, same thing, because changing language also changes thinking. So,
and with language, you don't mean talking a different language itself, but meaning different kind of words, I guess. What
exactly, different kind of words, like maybe leave away all that terminology that might alienate people. Maybe painting a different narrative for us, like oh, that incident post-mortem is like, maybe the story in people's heads is like people want to punish us for what we did wrong. But what if we can frame it, like turn this around and frame it as an actual learning opportunity? It's a whole different thing then. What if people don't see that they actually got better, but we need to do active praise to and celebrate also the little wins, like, hey, that's already a bit better than yesterday, and that's praiseworthy, and we should celebrate that. Is a whole different narrative, and it's a whole different language on things. Than always like being disappointed, or like, oh, we don't make progress, or we failed. But hey, actually, there's learning in that failure. We actually got better through this. So changing language can really help find new ways of thinking or shape how we think.
Really well. Your example of not mentioning pair programming was a real great example in that sense. Like, and I think these days the word agile is sometimes has a negative connotation. So then it's
True.
sometimes better to just not talk about it and just doing the things. And somehow some people are very concerned about names, but personally, I just want to help out teams, and for me, it doesn't really matter if it's called a Scrum Master, Agile Coach, or if it's, I don't know. For me, it's called a clown. I don't care, as long as I can help the teams. If that's
Yes.
that is indeed the thing to do. Okay, I want to move to already that last question. Who do you think I should ask next? And I know that this is again a question where you have a list of people that you wanted to bring in. And to make it a little bit easier, what I will do here is I will show a person where you can say a little bit about it, and then we move on that way.
Yes.
I'm sure that we can indeed have a little bit of these kind of things. So we already talked a little bit about this person. I had her already on the show, but I do think for the same thing as why it was good for you to hear all these people at Agile Testing Days talk about you. What do you want to say about Lisa?
Lisa has been one of my biggest influences early on in my career. I had the honor to meet her at my very first conference that I joined. And even at the very first meeting her in real life, she encouraged me to dare more and share my own stories. And she was like so confident and like, oh yeah, sure, you have a story to share. And have you thought about speaking and whatnot? It was really paving a path for me in the future, having that kind of early support from someone who, like, I mean, that's the great book author where I read so much about, right? Like I'm looking up to that person, and they're like, hey, come to my level. And I was like, it's just amazing, the support given throughout the years. And then I got to know also Janet.
Exactly. That's what I thought to bring up.
Exactly, which is just amazing herself. And same thing here. Over the years, I got to know Janet, and I'm so grateful for all the very thoughtful conversations I had with her, especially in really important moments in my life as well. So just amazing person to learn from, so much wisdom in there. And yeah, I can't even put words for her. Like, people should listen to these two.
Well, and I know from Lisa that Janet these days is retired or tries to retire, so
Yes.
it might be harder for people to get to get her to speak or listen to her. But still, there is lots of things that you can find, both what they've written together or the conversations that they've done. So indeed, very wonderful. But and both of them have been on the show, so you can find these conversations back again. And who's this next person?
So this is Vernon Richards, and I have been fortunate learning from him through conferences at first, and then the last years actually had the luck to also had Vernon as my work colleague. So it's a different kind of learning because you have the work context shared, so you can also talk about topics that are more sensitive as well because you have that context. And I just learned amazing things from Vernon through coaching sessions. It's like my headset is nearly falling off here.
Oh,
So the coaching sessions was super impactful for me doing with Vernon. He usually managed to show me, like, allow me to see myself different perspectives of what I didn't see before. And he was even influential in, like, now my career choice. So definitely want to follow
good.
and listen to.
And then who's this person?
So that's Elizabeth Segrova. And I'm always in awe when speaking with her because she's one of the greatest thinkers that I've met so far. So I think she has a sort of way to put words to things and make observations and really also help you then take your next step. It's amazing, and a great human being in general as well. But I'm always learning through those insightful conversations, even if it's just on the funny and silly side. It can have the full range until the sharing deep wisdoms. And she's also organizing a conference as well, so definitely want to check out.
And then who's this last person?
So that is Marit Pierri. I'm pretty sure I don't do justice to her name. So yet another person I learned amazingly much from over many years. She shares a lot of hands-on experiences and experiments as well, through her blog, through conference talks and workshops and whatnot. And I had the fortune to also have personal conversations with her relatively early on that were as influential as it also helped me start my personal challenges, for example. So one of the things that she did back then was like pairing with other testers to learn and grow and like get new challenges and find new approaches to how people approach problems. And that really inspired me to go on my first testing tour. And actually the first pairing partner that I had was her as well. But it really opened up the pathway for so many things. But yeah, she always keeps at the edge of things and thinking and always refining and reinventing her ways to approach testing and to also make things in general better in the sense of higher quality products. So yeah, I again follow her.
Definitely, yeah. She's yeah. I've been following her online for quite a while. I met her at Agile India, I think. Really amazing indeed to yeah to know as a person. So looking forward to having a conversation with her as well. So Lisi, it's been already a really wonderful time. The clock here says a little bit just before 2 hours. I don't know exactly because it took us a while in the beginning to get some technical stuff up and running before we started, but turns out that everything kept working right till the end. So
Yes,
really
exactly.
wonderful time. If people want to reach out to you, what could be a good way to connect with you?
I think the easiest way to connect with me is via social media.
Mhm.
So I'm nowadays on quite a lot of platforms, but the most active one that I'm on is Mastodon. So I sort of felt my new home there after Twitter died, basically. So I'm not active there anymore, which is, it's not a place that is there anymore. So Mastodon it is, but I'm also in a lot of other places, Blue
And I
Sky,
think maybe
LinkedIn, these kind of things.
this one helps people find all the different places where you're active
Exactly.
on. So
Yes.
that I think is helpful. And maybe to that as well, you have your own website where people can
Exactly.
find a lot more about you. Yeah, I really want to thank you for your time. It's been a wonderful evening for me. Yeah, I think we started out a little bit stressy because of the technical stuff,
Yeah.
but I think, well, at least for me, I felt very at ease right since we could start, and I hope it was the same for you because for me this was a wonderful conversation. So thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you for creating the space for it, and I really enjoyed it a lot. So it's often topics like, I think we talked about a lot of topics we don't always talk about, but we should talk more about. So thanks
Well,
for
yeah,
offering
I
that space.
agree. That's yeah. I'm myself always still amazed because I created these questions in 2009 or 2010
Yeah.
just for a blog, but I invented these in probably 5 to 10 minutes, and I'm still amazed at how well they flow together. I have no idea what I've eaten that day, but it definitely was a good inspiration because
It was.
indeed it's these are things that yeah make good conversations, and but yeah it also helps to have wonderful guests like you to keep that energy going, because let's face it, it's also already very late in the evening,
True.
so then it really helps to get that energy and conversations like that. So thank you very much.
Thank you too for having me.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of Agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other Agilists.